It's my pleasure to introduce Martha Knudsen, our luncheon speaker today. I currently have the pleasure of working with Martha on the MCLE board of the Supreme Court's Mandatory Continuing Legal Education Board, where Martha has been instrumental in development of guidelines and regulations relating to education of attorneys in the areas of mental health and well-being. Her dedication and effort in this work with both the MCLE board and the Utah State Bar has resulted in an expansion of the professionalism and civility rules applicable to lawyers to include an emphasis on well-being. Today, Martha will be sharing her substantial knowledge in this area with all of us. Martha received her JD degree from J. Reuben Clark Law School at BYU in 1999, and in 2015, she earned her master's degree in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. In addition to her work with the MCLE board and the Utah State Bar, Martha has consulted and is currently consulting with several organizations, private companies, and individuals in developing evidence-based well-being strategies. She is the current co-chair of the National Institute for Well-Being and the Laws Policy Committee, and in 2023 was recognized by the Utah State Bar when she received the Utah Legal Well-Being Impact Award. We're grateful that Martha could join us today. Please join me in welcoming Martha to our conference.
Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here, and thank you, David, for that wonderful introduction. Today, we are going to talk about well-being in our lives and in our professions. And, by way of background, what we're going to talk about today, let me give you a little bit of more information about me. So, when I was in law school, I didn't much think about whether or not I was happy, taking care of myself, any of those kinds of things. I did what we did back in the 90s, is you just got on with it, and you put your head down, and you just gutted it out. That was a lot of the common belief at the time, especially in the law, is that taking care of yourself and your own mental health and well-being was something you dealt with on your own time, and it was your own business, and nobody cared about it unless and until the wheels came off the bus, right? So I entered the profession that way, and the same idea that I could either do really well professionally, or I could be all super happy and fulfilled, like personally. So I put all my eggs in the do really well professionally bucket, and I did do well professionally for a long time until I didn't. By the time I was 10 years into my law practice, I was a shareholder at a law firm in town, and I was completely burned out, anxious all the time, depressed, and I thought it was my fault. So I walked away from that part of my time in the practice of law. Like, I am out. See you later, suckers. I do not want to do this anymore. I come to find out I really like the law. So before too long, I got talked out of my early retirement, and I went back to work as general counsel for a national real estate management company that is located here in Utah. And as I did so, I really thought about, like, okay, is that true? Do I have to either crush it professionally or do well personally? So I went out and started to look, right? All good research is me search, and I went looking to see, what do happy lawyers do differently? What do people who love what they do and do well at it, is it something that they're doing that they can also be happy in their life? And what I found was the science of positive psychology, which is really the science of optimal human thriving and performance. And I took myself back to school to get a master's degree And what I found in working with international experts on this subject was that I had been making a false choice, that it is not a choice between doing well professionally and being well personally, but being well in your personal life, it actually drives doing well professionally. And that you can't have sustainable, successful career without that aspect of being well. So now I have the great fortune to get to work at the intersection of law, justice-based organizations and other organizations, and the science of well-being. So I want to share with some of that with you today. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about well-being and why you should care. We're going to get those lawyers in the room some CLE credit. And hopefully, all of you will leave today with one idea of something that you can do to help maintain or increase your own well-being. So I am super informal. If you have questions or comments, please raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you and we'll talk about it. Yes, Craig.
Just one technical thing that I should have mentioned before. Those at home that are not here listening and participating via Zoom will see that one of the Zoom participants is this slide presentation. So if you'll toggle between the visual, the audio or the videotape being made of Martha's presentation, you can also look elsewhere among those observing, and you'll see these slides as one of the choices you can highlight so you can understand that as well as those in the room. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right, to get started and frame this up, I'm going to ask for you to call out some things. So please do so. We're all friends here. There's no wrong answers. All right. So when I say the phrase physical health, what pops into your head immediately? Diet, exercise. What else? Sleep. Anybody else? All right. Diet, exercise, sleep. Okay. We'll go with that. All right, how about when I say the phrase mental health? What pops into your head? Stress, okay. Pardon me? I heard somebody say something. Kids? Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Sleep, yeah. Good. Ooh, you're an outlier here on the front row, being in the outdoors. All right, let me make a guess about what a lot of you had pop into your head, and you can nod along if you agree with me. My bet is when I said mental health, some of you thought depression, anxiety, medication, therapy, right? Am I right? Yeah? Okay, I see a lot of nodding heads. All right, so my question for all of us, myself included, is why? Why is that what pops into our head immediately when we say mental health? When I asked you to think about physical health, nobody was shouting out cancer or broken bones or diabetes, right? All those things are part of physical health. The same is true with mental health. Mental health is far more than mental ill health. Those things are part of our mental health, but mental health is also all the awesome things that make our lives worth living. It's being fulfilled in what we do, feeling like our life is worthwhile, the relationships that we enjoy, the accomplishments, the positive emotion, all those things, right? It's not just what we typically think of when we say mental health. And here's the thing, everybody. We all have mental health. We all have it all of the time. If you are a human being, you have mental health, and you don't get to opt out. And thank goodness, because it is, like I just said, some of the best parts of being human. So with mental health, it exists on a spectrum, okay? I just said we're all on it all the time. And it's everywhere between thriving to barely surviving and everywhere in between. And we sit on this spectrum and all the time, and it goes up and down by the day, by the week, depending on what's happening in our lives, but also depending on the way that we are handling the things coming at us, the stresses in our lives, the relationships in our lives, how we interpret those things, how we're processing our emotions. So we move up and down based on little micro habits of how we interact with the world and how we process that internally. So we're working on our mental health all of the time. It is not something that's neutral. Either we can be present and cognizant of what it is that we're doing and build the kinds of resources, strengths, and capacities that science tells us help us to be resilient to the challenges of life and also move up towards thriving, or we just let it ride and what happens, happens. But everything that we do in our lives has an impact of where we sit on this spectrum. So it's important that we learn how to recognize this and also pay attention so we can maintain our health, our mental health, and improve it. Because usually what happens with people, yes, big things happen that can knock us down, but for the most part, it's the tiny little things over time when we're just letting it ride that all of a sudden we find ourselves in a place where we're just surviving. Usually we don't get there overnight. It's a process. So what we want to do is learn how to pay attention, keep ourselves healthy, and build the things that we know can help us stay that way. So when you hear me talk about well-being, it really is a continuous process toward thriving in all domains of our life. It's an incredibly expansive process. It involves everything, as we're going to talk about the different domains of this. And it's something we work on all the time. It's not like one day, all of a sudden, you're going to unlock and level up to well-being and ta-da, there you are, you have arrived. No, it's something that we carry with us and we need to work on our whole life. And it's really, like I said, the best parts of our lives. So we're all on this spectrum, and where we sit really impacts the things that we care about personally and professionally. So here you see the spectrum on this slide between surviving to thriving, and underneath each side are the scientific correlations associated with where you sit on that scale. So when you're thriving, let's look at all the things that we like. Better mental and physical health. If you're in an organization, right, you want your people to show up, less absenteeism, lower turnover. Your brains are your money makers here. This is the industry that you're in is very cerebral, right? We're very cognitive based all the time. And if you're doing well, if you're thriving, your memory works better. Your executive functioning is clicking along at a better rate. Job performance is correlated with higher well-being, with thriving. We are better able to handle stress. We're resilient to the challenges that come our way. Our relationships are better. And here, for my lawyers in bold, you see greater professional identity, and that is a sciencey way of saying civility and professionalism. And here on the flip side, you see the opposite stuff is correlated when we are struggling. So one thing I want to say here is that this does not mean that if you are somebody that has experienced or is experiencing more mental ill health, that doesn't mean that you can't be awesome at what you do. What it means is that we need to get out and take care of it, right? We need to do the things that we know can help us handle those things. Like, I burned out clinically when I left my practice at 10 years. I needed to talk to somebody to help me get out of that. Anxiety is something that pops up for me. I got to stay on top of it and do the things that help me to stay healthy, because if I don't, boom, there it is, my friend anxiety, right? So it's the kind of stuff we just need to pay attention to. But if we just let it sit in the background and we don't handle it, it does make things a lot harder for us to do the things that we care about, both personally and professionally. So the Utah Supreme Court here has taken great strides in focusing on the importance of our well-being, our mental health, in being competent at what we do. And I'm talking to my lawyers here, but the same stuff really applies across the board. So in 2023, the Utah Supreme Court added Comment 9 to Rule 1.1, which, for my lawyers in the room, you know, we have a duty to provide competent representation. And Rule 9 emphasizes that our mental, emotional, and physical health and caring for those things may impact our competence to practice law. So what does that look like when we're not taking care of ourselves? How does that show up in the practice? And this is also something that can translate to any kind of professional setting. So it could look like either you or somebody you work with suddenly not returning phone calls, like you just don't want to deal with that person, ghosting opposing counsel, or your clients. It can look like asking for extension after extension after extension, either in your legal work or your other professional work. It can look like a change in demeanor. Somebody that is typically, you know, easy to work with and happy suddenly is isolating. It could be that you become irritable, different things like that. Or it could look like me up here smiling at you, and I'm having a hard time and nobody knows it, right? So it really does, though, impact our ability to bring ourselves to work. So what we're talking about, and what I want you to think about for the rest of our time together, is really this idea of proactive building of the things that we know. And we're going to talk about these things that can help us to thrive, to handle stress and to thrive. So it's really this idea of prehabilitation versus rehabilitation. So we're all very familiar with the idea that if we're having a hard time, you go to a doctor, you go to see a therapist, right? Those kinds of things. Those are really important services that we should all take part of, and we need to have available and all take part of when we need them. But what we want to try to do is keep ourselves, to the extent that we can, from needing to do that, keep ourselves healthy, proactive, preventative measures. So who in here is a sports fan? Follows athletics, right? Okay, so elite athletes, what do? How do they train? Anybody want to call this out? Physically, okay, right? They train against injuries too, don't they? Like a lot of them, in order, for example, football players, they're going to train those muscles in their knees. So if they have a knee injury, they're going to come back a lot faster. They're going to prevent the injury or come back a lot faster. What about sports psychologists? Elite athletes have psychologists that help them mentally train, right? Have you ever heard of an athlete talk about how they had a really hard time on the field or doing what they were doing because they were having problems at home? Yeah. So they're taking care of their relationships. All these things, not just like football, for example, it's all these other things help athletes perform. And I want you to get in your head this idea that we are all performers. We may not be a football player, a baseball player, a golfer, but we're all performers. And so we need to take care of ourselves and train the different parts of ourselves to perform. So in talking about this prehabilitation versus rehabilitation, the focus on the prehabilitation, the building of things that we want, really began about 30 years ago as a cohesive message. A psychologist that I had the pleasure of working with, the University of Pennsylvania, named Dr. Marty Seligman. He was the president of the American Psychological Association at the time, and he issued a call to action for psychologists, researchers, and people in different disciplines to look beyond taking care of what we don't want. Because for years, we know what it is we don't want, and we've invested money and time and resources into eliminating those things, right? And so people want to be happy, but nobody really knows knew at the time, what does that look like? What are the components that make us happy, make us thrive as humans? And so Marty, he called for research, for funding, for work to find out, what are those things? And can we build them? Can we develop them in ourselves, in our organizations, and in our communities? And since then, this has blown up. When you see the well-being movement, you see all the stuff on the news in different areas. It all started with Dr. Seligman. And Marty has a construct of well-being. There's a lot of different ones out there, but I think this one is really serviceable, especially when we're talking about individual well-being. And his research has found these basic building blocks of a flourishing life. So instead of just telling somebody to go out there and build your well-being, flourish, he's like, okay, what are those things? So these 5 things, the V was added on by all of his students. We told him he was forgetting the rest of the body. But these 5 things that Marty put in place: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And the V is for vitality. That is the physical health component of this. So what Marty was looking at were, what are these things that we want for their own sake, right? Like positive emotion, that is the feel-good aspect of well-being. Okay, we all like to feel good, right? That's that. Engagement is that idea of we're developing our skills and we're using them in a way that makes us feel flow. Is anybody familiar with Mike Csikszentmihalyi's aspect of flow? It's the idea that when you have a skill and you're up against a challenge, you lose track of time. You're super absorbed in what you do, and that's an important aspect of well-being. We have relationships. Relationships are the most studied and impactful piece of our well-being and our ability to thrive. We have meaning. Now, meaning is something that you yourself have. It's nothing that anybody else can give you. It's something that you decide for yourself what makes your life worth living. What do you want to contribute that's bigger than yourself? This could be anything from a spiritual side, a higher power, down to my meaning in my life is to grow my family. My meaning in my life is, whatever it is, but it's that feeling like your actions are connected with that. Then there's achievement. That is that piece of, I can take the skills that I have and use them in a way that gets things done, that I accomplish my goals. And V is vitality, and that's the physical piece of this. So we know that these are the basic things that contribute to individual well-being, and this is going to look a little different to each of us. So it's my weight of those things is going to be a little bit different than yours. But what we do know is that if you put all of your emphasis on one bucket or 2 buckets, you're not going to have your well-being's not going to be as high. You're going to be more susceptible to mental ill health. So for example, for me, when I was burning out and all I was doing is focusing on my profession, all of my emphasis was on achievement. I had a little bit on engagement, achievement and vitality. I worked out and I worked. And I could not tell you what I did for fun. I remember going to therapy at the time. My therapist was like, Martha, what do you do for fun? And I was stunned. I couldn't say anything about that. It's because all my eggs were in those baskets, and it had an impact on me. So this is something that is important for all of us to decide for ourselves, but it does include all of these components. So we're going to do a little exercise so you can get an idea and reflect on how your well-being is doing and what it looks like for you in each of these buckets. So what we have here is a handout that you have that has this wheel on it. Does everybody have one? Okay. So what I would like you to do, whip out a pen or a pencil, and we're going to go through each of these and give you an idea of what your buckets look like for each of these components. Okay, so starting with positive emotion. So now this is feeling emotions like contentment, fulfillment, happiness, humor, interest, awe, pride, calm. like those feel good, like the good feels, right? So in that domain, I want you to just put an X on whichever number corresponds, 1 being not fulfilled and 5 being extremely fulfilled. And then we'll move on to engagement. This is, are you deploying your talents, strengths, or skills to meet challenges? Do you enjoy the learning process? Do you get absorbed in things that matter to you? Same thing, 1 through 5. All right, relationships. This is the feeling that you are supported, that you are valued, and you are loved by others. A good way to think about this is there's somebody in my life that I could call at 3 in the morning if I needed help. Same thing, 1 through 5. Okay, and then moving on to meaning. Do you have a sense, or to what extent do you have a sense that you and your life serve something bigger than yourself? This could be family, religion, sport, social causes, community, your professional life, etc. Then accomplishments. This is success, achievement, mastery, promotion, completion of projects, different things like that. And then finally, this is health. How's your physical vitality? Are you getting enough sleep, enough exercise, and are you eating healthy? Those things. So once you have all those little checks marked, I want you to take your pencil or pen and, starting with positive emotion, take a line and draw to where the X is on engagement, and then so on and so forth until you have a circle, which may be circular or may be incredibly lopsided. And as you do that, maybe spend a minute thinking about, starting with the areas that you are more towards the 5. What are the things that in your life that allow you to say that? And on the areas that maybe you end up more towards a 1 or a 2. Why is that? This is something that I encourage you to pay attention to this week. So if we want to build our well-being and we want to maintain our well-being, we need to know what it is that contributes to it and what it is that maybe where we need to shore up some areas. Because if not, we're on that spectrum and we're just letting it ride. So that's the first takeaway for you this week, is think about this wheel and think about what are the things that build those areas and what are the things that where maybe you're lacking and you can add to that. All right, so does anybody have any surprises that they found from this? Or are you all just yeah, it's pretty much what I thought? Or are you just all going to keep it quietly in your heart, which is great. Okay, as long as this gets you thinking, that is what we want to take away from this today. All right, so we've had an assessment of yourself, right? Because what gets measured gets managed, so it's important that we pay attention to these things and know where we are. So let's talk about some evidence-based strategies that you can start using to help you maintain your well-being and improve it. Some of you might be thinking, though, this wheel and this talk of evidence-based strategies, that's all great and all, but stress. We have a lot of stress. Is that true? Y'all feel like work is stressful, life is stressful, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty common for all of us. And I'm curious, when we talk about stress and say stress, does that give you a positive feeling or does that give you more of a negative feeling? Raise of hands, who feels positive about stress? Anybody? Cool. Yeah. Who feels negative about stress? Okay, most of you. All right. Few of you here are my outliers. So it's interesting when you Google stress, what comes up is like 10 ways stress is going to kill you. I'm like, we're all going to die because of stress. Okay, and there's some things that are true about that, but there's also the opposite is true. There's a lot of really positive health-enhancing things about stress. So what is stress? Okay, stress fundamentally is a biological reaction to things that we care about that helps us rise to the occasion, meet the challenge, and learn from it. So we could spend hours talking about all the science on this, but basically what happens is there's a threat that comes at us, we perceive it's a threat, our body goes into reaction to help us deal with it, right? Kicks out different hormones and the rest, which allows us in the short term to have the energy to deal with it, to expand our creativity and our thinking so we can meet the challenge. So those of you who have your hands raised, my bet is that you have been in that place, right? Where you're like, that was awesome. Where did I come up with that argument? Or whatever it is, right? To have the energy to meet the task. And then we're supposed to recover from it. And then as we do so, our brains wire so we're better at the situation the next time. The problem with stress, and the reason that you hear so much about stress is harmful and it's going to kill us all, is that we pop up into this stress response and our lives and are set up in a way that we never calm down. And so we're up here and high in the stress response, and our bodies and brains have this thing called homeostasis trying to pull us back down to baseline. And so the longer we're up here, the more, that's when we see the medical and the mental health problems that come with stress, is when we're in stress all the time and we don't ever recover. So the idea is that we're going to get into stress. If you are a human being, stress happens, and frankly, you want it to, because if it never did, you would be a couch potato that would never do anything, right? Because the things that we care about the most in our lives come with a dose of stress. So the idea, though, is to get up into stress and then recover and bring yourself back to baseline. So a lot of what we're talking about today impacts our ability to bring our physical self back down to baseline, okay? Follow at least the concept? All right, so the one takeaway on this is stress is neutral, recovery is good. So, maybe not stress so much about stress and focus instead on, am I doing the things that help me recover so I can use stress and then, and then be healthy. All right, so these strategies here that we're now going to talk about, they're like dominoes or levers. So when we're talking about building things into our lives that help us to stay healthy or get more healthy, I'm not asking you to suddenly add on to your day 2 hours of well-being stuff, because that just is like, oh, now I'm going to be stressed out about the well-being stuff I have to do. That's not the idea. The idea here is to change habits and build things into our lives that are kind of like little levers. What are the levers that we can push that will knock the dominoes into the row and make all this positive change, right? What are the things we can do in our days, in the way that we interact with others, and how we're handling stress, or all the things that can help us stay healthy. So these strategies are like levers. So the first strategy is a companion to that wheel that we did, which is the whole know thyself piece. These are our check engine lights. It's important for us to have an idea of what are the warning signs when, hey, we're not doing something to take care of ourselves. When maybe, hey, my positive emotion bucket, I don't know what fun is, right? The warning signs. So these here, I put this here and it will be, I think, on the website for you to take a look at. These are just signs that are incredibly human reactions to being under immense challenge without recovery, for not taking care of our well-being and different things like that. Our bodies and brains are incredibly intelligent, and they will scream at us when hey, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not filling up those buckets. Where's your PERMA? Why aren't you taking care of me? So this stuff, we can learn to spot it in ourselves, we can get out ahead of it. Like, we all have our own super special ones that we are go-tos. Mine, I tend to be really anxious. Talked about that before. I tend to isolate. Like, I'll ghost out of things with friends, and I get really irritated with my work. So I've been around the block with this enough times to know that, when those things start popping up for me, I stop. I'm like, okay, what bucket am I not paying attention to? Or what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? And I can course correct. So I can get myself back to where I was and not go down the tubes into total burnout like I did when I was 10 years into practice. So I encourage you to just, pay attention to yourself, what's going on in your body and your brain and your emotions and the rest. All right. So now the positive stuff. So this is all the good stuff that we know helps us be healthy. So when Marty Seligman was looking at this, we know getting rid of this, we know what the stuff is we need to get rid of. And there's lots of science on that. There's lots of things that can help us get rid of what we don't want. What we do want and things that help us thrive, like in this wheel here, they're kind of different in some ways than just getting rid of the negative. Just getting rid of the negative, at best, we sit at neutral. The stuff that we're going to talk about and that's in here, these are the things that add up to a life worth living, a fulfilled life, a life when you look back and you're like, yeah, I led a good life. Okay, so the first one is just, everybody knows this, but is so much worth talking about, is health and vitality. So that is the most simple lever we can push, the most simple domino that we can push to help us maintain our health and well-being and to move towards thriving. Now, in honor of Halloween, I have a picture of this kid holding his head separate from his body. And that's just to remind us that, look, when we talk about health, like physical health and vitality, this is not just a neck down thing, okay? Our mental health and well-being is a whole somatic process. It is not just neck up. So taking care of our physicality and our health, it is the very baseline way to help us to thrive and to help us have awesome mental health and well-being. So what are some of the basics here? We all called them out at the beginning. One of them, exercise, right? Movement. So we are kind of a sedentary society, especially those of us that work in offices. We sit all day long. And, the first thing I want you to think about this week is prioritize movement. Okay, has anybody heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking? Yeah, it's true. It is not good for us, right? It's not good for our physical health, but also it is not good for our brains. If we want our brains to work and be the money makers that they are, right? Help us do the things that we care about at work and in our personal lives. Movement is an incredibly important thing, okay? This is a brain scan of people after 20 minutes of sitting quietly versus 20 minutes of walking. So what can you do during your day that you can get up and move? That's why you have that little thing on your watch that's super annoying and yells at you every hour to get up and move, okay? It helps our brains work better. It helps our moods. It's incredibly important. And we talked about stress and being up here, okay? Movement during the day helps us recover and get to baseline, right? So it's a stress recovery piece. So that's movement. The other one is prioritizing sleep. Sleep is so much more important than we talk about, at least in legal arenas. Any lawyers in the room remember from law school or maybe in your practice, like this whole idea of competitive stress and, you only slept 5 hours last night while I have not slept more than 2 every night for a week. Anybody familiar with that? Yeah, I see some nodding heads. Why do we do that? That's like the dumbest competition ever, because not getting sleep makes you so much, it makes us dumb. We need to sleep. Our bodies learn and remember, they process information. We solve problems in our sleep. We recover, our brains recover in our sleep. And interestingly, if you are getting 5 hours of sleep or less, it's like shotgunning a 6-pack of beer before you go into the office. You know? Maybe fun for some people on other occasions, but I don't think it's what you want to do before you go into the office. So getting sleep is imperative. We need to build a culture around like, awesome, competitive. You only got 4 hours of sleep last night. Guess what? I got 8. And I'm the winner in that competition. So get sleep. So this is a quick tool that I like to always talk to groups about when we are working with challenging situations, stressful kind of work like you have, is HALT. So anybody ever get out of sorts and you're just angry all of a sudden, or just grumpy or whatever it is during the day, or in a conversation with someone, and suddenly like you have this off the charts reaction to something that's probably not that big of a deal? The first place to look at are these basics of vitality. Use the HALT method. You can even picture in your head this stop sign. You're like, okay, am I hungry? I get hangry. Anybody else get hangry? Okay, am I hungry? Am I angry? Which could be any emotion. Am I lonely, or am I tired? This is a sign that you need to take care of your physical self. Because oftentimes after we've gone and eaten something, had some sleep, engaged with somebody that we care about, these problems that seem so huge are suddenly manageable. So this is a really good first step for all of us, is this HALT method. That is the physical vitality piece. It is a fundamental lever that makes all the other things on this wheel easier to fill up. All right, so the next one here, so we have lonely here. This is kind of a nice segue into the next area, which is on relationships. So loneliness is a problem in our society, and it's getting worse. It really ramped up during the pandemic, and it is something that we are seeing in our students as we measure them going into school, especially into law school and other professions. Humans are hivish creatures. We need each other. If we don't feel that we belong, if we don't feel that we have people in our lives that we can call at 3 a.m. that care about us, it impacts everything about us. It impacts our physical and our mental health. If we are continually going into organizations where we feel like we don't belong, we actually become dumber, because we have this piece of our subconscious that's always worrying about this. We're not connecting in the same way that we did. We could have all sorts of experts get up here and tell us why that's the case. But the reality is that we are becoming a lonely population. So positive relationships that matter to us, that enhance our lives, positive connections, these are the kinds of things that help us stay healthy. We need each other. And the way that we interact with each other on a day-to-day basis really matters. All those little positive or negative interactions add up. So connect. This is something, if you do nothing else today, think about the people that are your people and connect. That's something that I have to work on a lot, because my natural inclination is to be an introvert, and when I'm having a hard time is to isolate, and that just keeps me in a bad place. And so it's connect. So when we're talking about stress, connecting with other people helps take us from up here down to baseline. Because when we are interacting with people, we're having those positive emotions. When we're giving hugs to our friends and family, our bodies actually release oxytocin. And a lot of us have heard of that as the love hormone. It's the connection hormone. And it is a natural stress antidote that takes us from here down to baseline. And so connection and relationships are hugely important. Don't hug your coworkers. I don't know if that's what you're laughing about. That's probably not the best move. But connect, right? You can connect at work. It doesn't have to mean that with your coworkers that you have to hug all day and brush each other's hair. That is not what I'm talking about with this. In the context of a professional life, it is building high quality connections. thinking about all of those little small micro moments of interaction we have with each other, that we have with the public, that we have with different people that we work with outside of our organizations. And it's really those small moments of connection. We need the big moments we just talked about, but it's also those small moments that add up to either help us thrive or to make things more difficult. So in your own organizations, the quality of the ties in your organization, they really impact how much you like your work, how healthy you're going to be, how well you're going to handle stress. So the theory of high quality connections is this. All the big and little moments that occur day to day, minute to minute in your work, they profoundly impact you and they profoundly impact others. So we've been talking a lot about individual well-being, what you can do for yourself. But I really want to emphasize here with this connection, high quality connection piece, is that we co-create the conditions where we can thrive as individuals and as organizations and as a community. We're in this together. It is as important for our well-being. The individual stuff is imperative, and the organizations and communities that we live in have a huge impact. And so we are impacting others with how we're interacting, just as they are impacting us. So the more high quality connections we can have within an organization, the better people like their jobs, the better they perform, the happier they are, the healthier that they are. This is incredibly important. So what does that look like? It is the tiny things that take like no time at all, and that we don't even think about. Saying please and thank you, letting people know that they're valued, making eye contact, knowing people's names, using a respectful tone. These are not hard things, right? But so often we get so busy and we're not doing these for ourselves or for others. And so this is another one. This is one tiny thing you can do today is think about the tiny micro moments of interactions you have with others and how can you make them respectful. And then notice how you feel when you do that. So these are high quality connection moves, and there's a lot of really good science. Jane Dutton, if you're interested in this, she has several incredible books on high quality connections and how to build that at work and in your personal life. So, but what about all those things that can happen to us at work that are not really high quality connections? I understand in talking to the organizers of this conference that you folks deal with some tough situations and really with a lot of people that can be angry or upset. Is that true? Yeah? Okay, yes, right? And how does that make you feel? It's tough. Do you ever take that home with you? Does it color your day? Maybe make you not like your job as much? Okay, that's a hard thing about working with the public sometimes and working with sometimes with lawyers and lawmakers and companies is that we all want to make the community a better place. I do believe that, but we maybe are pulling the oars in different directions. Okay, and that can be challenging for all of us and our own ability to like what we do and come home from the day feeling like you have something left over for your family and for your life. So today, I just want to mention just a strategy for everybody here on how we can handle those tough interactions at work. So first of all, I want you to think about yourself and maybe consider, am I the one doing this to somebody else, right? Like, is there a better way for me to get my point across? So maybe reflect on that. And if sometimes you are the one, I don't know, maybe think about doing it differently next time, because I'm telling you, we co-create our environments, and what goes around does come around, and the science shores that up. So, all right, so this is a strategy that I have used with different clients who deal with challenging conversations a lot. And the first one is to try to be present. So, you know when somebody comes at you and you all of a sudden have like this jump of like emotion? Is that familiar to everybody? Like I go into fight. Like I want to start throwing punches. Like that's just the feeling that I have in my body. So the first thing to do is notice that that's happening. Like, oh, I'm getting angry, and do something to bring yourself to the present moment. It could be feeling your feet on the floor, noticing 5 things you can see in the room, whatever that is. Then next is just to the extent you can, like take a breath, stay calm. If you can remind yourself, this is not me. This is not personal. And turn on your active listening. Because a lot of times people, when they talk to you about these things, they are upset because something really matters to them. And so what's coming out of their mouth to you, even if it's not appropriate, is not about you. And so you can calm them down by using active listening. Like, so what I hear you saying is this or that, right? That can help de-escalate a situation. And then validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with them. Like, sounds to me like this is really hard for you, or you're really angry. And a lot of this, I think, is going to be dealing with the public, probably more so than the other professionals. And if somebody keeps coming at you, set boundaries. Say, I need to finish the phone call. You can call me. You can talk to me later, or we can continue this meeting at a time that you can be more calm. That is something that I would hope your colleagues and your organizations would support you on that. And then build up those healthy habits. Build up those things about the self-care stuff that we're talking about, because it is the self-care and that building those resources that lead you towards thriving, that help us be able to handle tough situations without like having it impact us in a huge way. Does that resonate with anyone on this? This is a hard thing. Like you can't control what other people do. You can control how you handle it. And that is what this is. This is just a format. You can even print this out and put this with your materials. If you have this happen to you when you're on a phone call or anything like that, on a Zoom call, and then you just kind of check it off to the side where other people can't see. So 2 things from this. Number 1, you can only control yourself and how you handle this, and these are steps. Number 2, taking care of yourself all the time helps you be able to handle this in a way that you feel good about. And number 3, if you're the guy or the gal that's making somebody have to use this checklist, that is something that I encourage you to think about, right? Incivility is not skillful advocacy. All right, and I want to leave everyone on a happy note here, and this is prioritize authentic feel-good emotions. I am not talking about slap a smile on your face and just be happy, because that is toxic, and that is basically that's crap, right? That is not something that is going to help you. This is thinking about what are the things that bring you those feel-good emotions. What in your life brings those to you? Or what can you go try or build into your life that could bring those to you? And these are all sorts of different things. And what makes you feel good is going to be different than everybody else. And the idea, though, is that you want to build these into your days. Okay, these are little things you should even schedule. It could be that music is something that helps you feel good. Listen to music during the day. It could be going outside in the sunshine brings on a positive emotion, or reading, or whatever it is in your life that gives you that little spark of contentment or awe or creativity or pride. Whatever that is, actually schedule that into your life and do that. So positive emotions are for more than just feeling good. They actually make our bodies and our brains feel safe. So we're talking about the stress response being up here, right? Positive emotions and having more of those actually helps us come down to baseline, okay? It's something that helps us feel good, recover from stress. And positive emotions, again, aren't just about feeling good. They actually help us build resources. They're like those little levers that lead to other things that help us maintain or build our well-being. So think about when things you know that you should do that are good for you, like go see your friends, go work out, right? Go outside. Okay. Are you more likely to do those when you are feeling good, like positive emotion, than when you're feeling a lot of like challenging emotions? Yeah, of course you are. And so the more positive emotion that you can build, it opens the door for you to then build other resources that help us maintain our well-being. Positive emotions also help us think better. We become more creative. We're able to access more solutions to challenging problems when we're primed with positive emotion. I mean, they've done this with doctors and research. Like they'll bring it in and they give doctors a bag of candy. This is how simple it is. They can't eat the candy because the sugar will jack up the experiment. But then they send these doctors in to solve these complicated medical problems. And the ones that were all primed with somebody giving them a sack of candy, like, oh, sweet, I got candy. They solved way more problems a lot faster and in more creatively than the other group of doctors that didn't get a bag of candy. So prime yourself with positive emotions. Prime your teams with authentic, positive emotions. So here's the kicker about that, though. Negative and challenging emotions are always going to be stronger than the positives. This does not mean that we want to stuff challenging emotions or get rid of them, because we can't. You can stuff them, but they will pop back up again somehow, somewhere down the line. And also, negative emotions are necessary. There are teachers. They help us be able to live in reality, right? That's part of life. It gives us a contrast between this unwavering, like everything's fine, right? So we need our negative emotions, but the problem is that they are a lot stronger. So what we need to do is build more positive to kind of counteract some of the narrowing and closing in characteristics of challenging emotions. So the research shows that we want to have about a ratio of 3 positive emotions to counteract some of the challenging emotions that we have. So, build those into your day. And just know that this kind of stuff, like building on positive emotion, and this is also comes down to gratitude, which is a positive emotion. The reason that you hear so much about this stuff out in the world and you see gratitude journals and stuff like that is because we all have this thing called a negativity bias. And it is something that all humans have. It is thought to come from when we were cavemen, and if you didn't spot the tiger, you were going to die. But the negativity bias is just our brains are trained to pick up negative emotion and pick up negative things and scary things way faster than we pick up positive things. So, when you get like your grades back or you get a thing back on your an eval from your people at work or comments on something you've done and 9 of them are good and 1 of them's bad, what do you focus on? Okay, if you're like me, you're like in a hyper obsess about the one negative one, right? You blow off all the good ones. That's a negativity bias at work. So we need to do our work proactively. This is that prehabilitation to, notice the things, train our brains to engage in the stuff that brings us positive emotion, train our brains to notice the things that are good in our lives, because those are the things that can help us continue to expand. Those are the levers that we can push to help us build the things that will allow us to thrive and maintain well-being in stressful professions like the ones that you are all engaged in. So as I leave you today, 2 things. Number 1, ask for help when you need it. There is no shame in experiencing challenges with your mental health or well-being. It is very human to do so. It is something that I have experienced, a lot of my colleagues have, and frankly, I feel like I'm the better for it. I'm good at what I do. I've been great in my profession, and part of the reason that I continue to do so is that I have asked for help when I need it. It can be really difficult to do so, but please, please, please use your resources and do so if you need it. That is number 1. Number 2, think about, based on all the stuff we talked about today, what is one small shift that you can make to strengthen your own well-being and to support that of your colleagues? Think of one lever that you can push for yourself, and I encourage you to do that today. So we are about up against it, but if anybody has questions, I will be out here, or you can reach out to me. Here's my email. And yeah, I think we're wrapping it up. All right, so everybody, thank you so much for having me, and good luck with the rest of your day.
Thank you, Martha. Just a quick call out to those that are watching online. You remember when you received your online instruction as to how to log on, that there were 2 different sessions today. At this point, you need to log out of the meeting that you're in, and there'll be a new meeting starting with our next presentation. Those login information details are in the email you received for Wednesday's Zoom conference. Thank you.